Maximus Reeves stood rigid in formation with 12 other private security contractors, his eyes scanning the opulent crystal hall of the Celestial Concordat. The annual gathering of galactic empires had transformed the space station into a kaleidoscope of alien dignitaries, their ceremonial garments shimmering under arrays of exotic light sources. He despised these diplomatic functions with their endless protocols and theatrical displays. But the paycheck was too good to refuse. "Maintain position," crackled through his earpiece. Even as he acknowledged, his attention was drawn to the center of the hall, where a throne-like structure materialized from the quantum floor. The assembled delegates fell silent. Empress, or of the Stellaris Empire, emerged through a dimensional fold, and for a moment, even Maximus's cynical facade faltered. Her beauty was otherworldly. Flowing silver hair adorned with microscopic stars that actually twinkled, and skin marked with intricate stellar patterns that pulsed with inner light. She carried herself with an authority that made even visiting royalty avert their gazes. A procession of suitors approached the throne, each presenting elaborate gifts that defied human comprehension. A Krillian warlord offered a contained nebula, its swirling gases captured within a crystal sphere. A Viridian prince presented a star shard that still burned with ancient light. One by one, they made their cases for marriage, and one by one, they were courteously but firmly declined. "That makes exactly 10,000 rejections," whispered a fellow guard beside Maximus. "And still they come, hoping to win the heart of the eternal Empress." The dismissals continued for hours. By the time the final suitor retreated, head bowed in disappointment, Maximus had mentally cataloged 17 different alien species and their mating rituals. The Empress remained unmoved throughout, her stellar markings never once shifting from their calm, controlled pattern. As the ceremony concluded and delegates began to disperse, a ripple of surprise passed through the remaining crowd. Empress stood abruptly, her gaze sweeping the room before settling directly on Maximus. "You," she said, her voice carrying despite speaking at normal volume. "The human in Sector 7 formation. Approach." Maximus exchanged glances with his team leader, who nodded permission. He stepped forward, boots clicking against the crystalline floor as hundreds of eyes tracked his movement. As he drew closer, he noticed the Empress's stellar patterns shifting subtly. Curiosity, perhaps? "Your name, guard?" "Maximus Reeves, Your Imperial Majesty." "Maximus Reeves," she repeated, as if testing the words. "Former Earth Alliance Special Operations, current private security contractor. I have reviewed your service record." That caught him off guard. "Ma'am, you will serve as my personal security escort to the secondary summit on Vortex Station. Prepare immediately." The pronouncement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Even her own advisors seemed startled by the decision. Maximus felt multiple political schemes begin forming in the minds around him, but he focused on the practical aspects. "With respect, Your Majesty, I'm not equipped for personal protection duties of this magnitude. Perhaps one of your—" "I have chosen," she interrupted, stellar patterns now flickering with what he interpreted as amusement. "You do not attempt to impress me with gifts or flowery promises. You question the logic of my decisions. This intrigues me." Her chief advisor, a tall being with crystalline skin named Vex, stepped forward. "Your Imperial Majesty, perhaps we should discuss. Prepare the ships," or commanded, already turning away. "We depart within the hour." Maximus found himself swept into a whirlwind of activity. His basic security gear was upgraded to Imperial standard weapons and armor. He received a crash course in Stellaris royal protocols from a stressed diplomatic aide. By the time he boarded the Imperial flagship, he was questioning every decision that had led him to this moment. The ship itself was a marvel of technology, its corridors lined with displays showing real-time stellar data. As they entered hyperspace, Maximus conducted his security sweeps with increasing unease. The route passed through disputed territory, perfect for an ambush. In the Empress's private quarters, he found her reviewing holographic star charts. "You're concerned about the Nexus corridor," she observed without looking up. It's a choke point, Your Majesty. If anyone wanted to make a move against you, Advisor Vex assured me our passage is secure. She finally turned to face him fully. But you disagree. I trust actions, not assurances. Her stellar markings shifted to what he'd learned indicated approval. You speak plainly. The suitors never do. They weave elaborate speeches and present cosmic treasures, but none ever thought to question my safety. They probably assume you can defend yourself. She touched the patterns on her arm. These marks are not merely decorative. Our people undergo transformations at certain stages. I am, between cycles, vulnerable in ways that would shock my would-be husbands. Before Maximus could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the ship. All hands, combat stations. The intercom crackled with urgency. Unidentified vessels emerging from hyperspace fold. Maximus's training kicked in instantly. Your Majesty, we need to get you to the emergency pods. He grabbed his weapon and took point, the Empress following without argument. Explosions rocked the ship as they reached the escape section. Imperial guards fought desperately against boarding parties, their energy weapons lighting up the corridors like deadly fireworks. Maximus returned fire while directing or into the nearest pod. The others, she began. They're buying us time. Strap in. He sealed the hatch just as a massive explosion tore through the ship's rear section. The pod launched automatically, spinning away from the dying flagship into the gravity well of an uncharted planet. The emergency systems worked overtime as they plummeted through the atmosphere. Maximus studied the readouts with growing concern. The air's toxic to Stellaris physiology. We'll need to find shelter fast. They crashed in a dense alien forest, the pod's emergency beacon automatically activating. But as they emerged into the strange environment, or noticed the beacon sputtering and dying, damaged in re-entry, Maximus confirmed, salvaging what equipment he could. Basic weapons, a water filtration device, emergency rations, enough to survive for days, not weeks. The Empress stumbled, her stellar patterns flickering erratically. The atmosphere, it's affecting me already. Here, take this. He handed her a breathing device from the pod's medical kit. It should filter the worst toxins. As they sought shelter from the planet's numerous dangers, Maximus noticed Or's royal demeanor beginning to crack. She flinched at every sound, struggled with each step. Her transformation cycle, whatever that meant, was clearly draining her. They found a cave system as night fell. Using his military experience, Maximus established a defensive perimeter while Or sat heavily against the wall. I've never felt so helpless, she admitted, watching him work. Vulnerability isn't weakness, he replied, setting up motion sensors. It's information. Knowing your limits keeps you alive. She studied him in the dim light. You chose me for personal escort. I chose differently than 10,000 others. My choice was practical, not romantic. A sound that might have been laughter escaped her. Practical. How refreshing. The first night tested them. Predators probed their defenses. The breathing apparatus struggled to keep up with Or's needs. Maximus barely slept, constantly monitoring the environment and his charge's condition. By morning, he'd rationed their supplies and plotted a course toward a signal source he detected, possibly a crashed ship or ancient structure. How long can you maintain your transformation cycle without? Whatever you need, he asked as they moved through the forest. Days, perhaps. Without the ascendant plane's energy sources, my people's life cycle disrupts. The stellar markings, they're not decoration. They're conduits for cosmic energy that sustains us between stages. And if you miss this transformation, power fades. Life expectancy dramatically decreases. She paused. Many of my people have died trying to force transformations without proper conditions. The revelation added urgency to their journey. But hours later, they encountered a patrol of mercenaries, clearly searching for something. Or someone. Maximus pulled her into the undergrowth just in time. As the patrol passed, he caught fragments of conversation referencing the Empress and payment upon delivery. Betrayal, or whispered, her patterns flickering with rage. Or careful planning, Maximus countered. Someone knew our route. Someone on your ship. Her stellar markings dimmed to almost black. Vex. He insisted on the secondary route. We deal with him later. First, survival. They skirted the patrol, eventually discovering the source of the signal. Ancient ruins of what might have been a communication center. As they explored, they found evidence that they weren't alone on the planet. Recent campfires discarded equipment marked with Concordat insignia. More survivors? Or hunters? Or wondered aloud, does it matter? We need to send a distress signal before your transformation deadline. Working together, they attempted to activate the ancient technology. Or's energy manipulation abilities, weakened as they were, proved crucial in interfacing with the alien systems. Meanwhile, Maximus maintained guard and set traps around their position. Why did you really choose me? He asked during a quiet moment. And don't say it was about practicality. She hesitated, then touched her stellar patterns. I've waited centuries for someone to see me, not my title or power. 10,000 suitors saw only what they could gain. You saw only what needed to be done. Before he could respond, their proximity alarms triggered. 3 ships descended from the sky, their design matching descriptions of mercenary vessels. As figures emerged, Maximus recognized the leader immediately. Commander Raske, he identified, adjusting his weapons. Best mercenary money can buy. Or grab his arm. You know him. Fought with him. Then against him. He has no principles beyond profit. The mercenary force fanned out, professional in their approach. Maximus counted 15 hostiles, all well-equipped. With or weakened and no reinforcements, direct confrontation was suicide. We need to be smart about this, he told her. Use the environment. Draw them out. Together, they orchestrated a series of hit-and-run attacks. Maximus's training combined with Or's knowledge of energy manipulation created an effective, if desperate, defense. They used the ancient ruins architecture for ambushes, collapsed tunnels to separate enemy forces, and even managed to capture one soldier's equipment. For the captured soldier's data, they confirmed their worst suspicions. Vex had indeed orchestrated the attack, having gathered a consortium of rejected suitors. The plan was to capture Or during her vulnerable transformation period and force her in a marriage with Prince Velasar, who had offered the most substantial political alliance. All of this because I refused to marry for politics? Or's voice shook with emotion. Power makes people do terrible things, Maximus said grimly. But we're not done yet. Using the ancient communications array, they managed to broadcast a distress signal. But Rask's forces had triangulated their position. The final assault began as night fell. Maximus's tactical training proved invaluable as he established overlapping fields of fire and kill zones. Or, despite her weakening condition, managed to create energy barriers that deflected enemy fire. Together, they held the ruins against impossible odds. As dawn approached and their ammunition dwindled, a miracle occurred. Ships bearing Earth Alliance and Concordat emblems dropped from hyperspace. The rescue force, following their beacon signal, arrived just as Maximus's last magazine ran dry. Raske attempted to surrender, but Or would have none of it. This one captured will face justice, she declared, her stellar patterns flaring with royal authority despite her exhaustion. The aftermath unfolded rapidly. Vex was arrested, his conspiracy unraveled. The rejected suitors faced diplomatic sanctions. Or's transformation crisis was addressed aboard a medical frigate, where specialists stabilized her condition. Weeks later, back at the Concordat, a grand trial exposed the full scope of the conspiracy. Through it all, Maximus remained by Or's side, not as a bodyguard, but as something more complex. 10,000 suitors failed where one human succeeded, announced the Concordat's High Chancellor as the proceedings concluded. The Empress has chosen, or stood before the assembled delegates, her stellar patterns now vibrant and confident. I choose not a husband in the traditional sense, but a partner. One who has proven loyalty not through grand gestures, but through actions in the face of death itself. She turned to Maximus. Will you walk beside me as we reshape what marriage means in the Stellaris Empire? He considered the implications, the politics, the responsibilities, the complete upheaval of his carefully planned life. Then he looked at her stellar patterns, which now displayed what he'd learned to recognize as hope and genuine affection. On one condition, he said, causing a ripple of surprise through the crowd. We do this as equals. No more of this imperial subject nonsense. Her laughter rang clear and genuine. Agreed, Maximus Reeves. Agreed. The formal celebration that followed transformed the Concordat into something unprecedented, a fusion of human and Stellaris cultures, where duty and love were no longer at odds. As artificial lights dimmed and real stars became visible through the station's crystal dome, Orr and Maximus stood together on a balcony, overlooking the diplomatic gathering below. "Do you ever regret choosing me?" she asked, her stellar patterns dancing with contented light. "I regret that it took a conspiracy and near death to get here," he replied. "But the destination? No regrets at all." She leaned into him, a gesture that would have been unthinkable for the formal Empress he'd first encountered. 10,000 failed because they tried too hard to win me. You succeeded because you protected me. Sometimes the prize isn't about conquest, but about partnership. As they watched day, new dawn break over the station. Both knew their journey had just begun. The Stellaris Empire would need to adapt to a human influence at its highest level. Political alliances would shift. New traditions would emerge from the blending of cultures. But in that moment, none of that mattered as much as the simple truth they'd discovered. Sometimes the most profound connections arise not from grand romantic gestures, but from shared adversity and mutual respect. The tale of the Empress who rejected thousands until she found the one who saw her simply as someone worth protecting spread quickly through the galaxy. Years later, diplomats and historians would study the transformation of the Stellaris Empire under its unique dual leadership. They would note how Orr's stellar transformation cycles became occasions for celebration rather than vulnerability, how Maximus's practical approach to royal duties improved efficiency across the Empire, and how their partnership inspired new forms of interspecies cooperation. Children across the galaxy would grow up knowing the story of how love conquered galactic politics, how a simple bodyguard achieved what 10,000 suitors could not through treasure or promises, but through unwavering loyalty in humanity's darkest hour. The night sky had never seemed so full of possibilities.